So, you want to save the world with clean energy? Make money doing it? Confused about the economic and technical realities of residential and commercial solar, batteries, heat pumps, EVs? Want the real-world scoop on new energy technologies, not manufacturer hype? Then tune in to the Weekly Energy Show, hosted by Barry Cinnamon. Insights from Barry's 40-plus years in the solar and energy industry will help you understand the future ways we'll generate and consume energy. And now, here's Barry.
Welcome to this week's Energy Show. Now, this week, we're focusing on the contractor's perspective for solar and storage installations. Now, specifically, we're talking about all of the back office work that it takes to do a great job for a home or a business installation. Now, your average solar and battery contractor doesn't have any control over equipment costs like solar panels, inverters, batteries, basically all the hardware. They have lots of control over other costs such as sales, advertising, salaries, project management. We call those soft costs. And in many cases, these soft costs are over half the cost of an installation. And so the best way for solar contractors, installers to control costs for homeowners is to focus on these soft costs. But these soft costs are so hard to control. It's a surprisingly complicated process from start to finish, with a lead to designing panels on the roof, to dealing with shading, modeling savings and financing, creating proposals, engineering plans, permitting, and then just kind of the downstream part of managing the installation, inspection, utility interconnection, monitoring, that kind of thing. And so it's a ubiquitous problem for every single company that does solar and storage installations, residential or commercial, that they have to automate this. And it's funny, like 20 years ago when I started in solar, I developed really early software to streamline only part of the process. It was clunky in Excel and Word and Adobe. And it's just amazing. 20 years later, Aurora Solar has a complete platform to almost completely automate the design and installation process for solar and battery contractors. And it's an incredibly impressive solar design tool. We're starting to use it here at Cinnamon Energy Systems, and many, many other big companies are using it. Aurora was founded in 2012 by Sam Adiyamo and Chris Hopper. They're both Stanford Business School grads, and it's my pleasure to have Sam on our show today. So welcome to the show, Sam.
Thanks a lot, Barry. Thank you very much for not only having this show for so many years, but for inviting me.
Hey, it's my pleasure. It's funny. I just think back, and you have managed to do such a great job with your team on automating this solar design and installation process. And I have such an appreciation for it because I've been struggling with it for decades. All right, so let's just start off. Tell us a bit about the product and services that Aurora currently offers.
Yeah, that's great, Barry. I think that you gave a very good overview of the problem that many solar installers face, which is that the process of getting to the point where you get a customer educated about solar, you figure out what is the best solar design for their particular house, if we're focusing on a residential customer, and you calculate how much energy you'll produce, how much money you will save them, and do that efficiently is pretty broken and pretty difficult without software. So what Aurora does is it is a software platform that is used to design, quote, and ultimately sell solar installations to property owners across the United States and increasingly across the world. We have about 300 people in our company, and our software is used or has been used to process over 7 million solar projects since we started back in 2013.
Wow, it's amazing. So who are some of your typical customers?
Our customers range from what people would call mom and pop shops, small and medium-sized businesses. So that could be a solar contractor that has 5 people, someone working on sales, someone managing an install crew, someone maybe taking care of the books and accounting and operations, and other folks doing general tasks. So we have thousands of those type of companies that use our software, and all the way to some of the biggest solar companies in the country and in the world. So that ranges from publicly traded firms like SunPower, Sunnova, Tesla, and of course we're honored to include your company recently as one of our customers.
All right. Well, the honor is earned by such great software. What gave you the idea to start Aurora?
Well, Barry, you talked about how you had to develop some sort of spreadsheets and tools for yourself 20 years ago because, you're one of the real heroes and veterans of this industry. And myself and my co-founder, Christopher, we went through something similar when we were in grad school. Because what we were doing is on our nights and weekends, for whatever reason may be, and it's a whole other story why we came up on this opportunity, but we were convinced that solar was the future. And we wanted to see that whether we could design a solar installation for a site in an emerging market. Now, keep in mind, we were doing this from our dorm rooms in Palo Alto. And ultimately, we settled on a school that was halfway across the world in Nairobi, Kenya. And the process of going through trying to figure out how many solar panels should fit on the property, how much energy they'll produce, how much money it would save the end customer. And before that, even figuring out who would be the right customer for a solar installation was extremely manual. It was extremely costly. It was extremely painful. And when I say extremely manual, I mean we were hiring people on the equivalent of something like Upwork to go to the site, take a bunch of measurements, take a bunch of photographs, send us back that information, then would ship over data loggers so they could install them and see how much energy they were consuming. Send us back that information. We had our spreadsheets and our Google folders, or back then maybe Dropbox folders, and different online calculators. And this was just for one project. It ultimately took us about 9 months just to design the system. And we flew down there and installed it. And, it ended up being a great success. It was a 50 kW system with 3,500 amp hours at 48 volts battery bank. But ultimately, it became clear to us that if we were going to do any more of these solar installations, we would need much better software. So we put any sort of physical installation on hold. We pivoted our way to software, and that's what we've been doing ever since. Basically, with the software, we're able to support so many more companies and, support much more solar being installed globally, both in the residential and the commercial sector.
Sam, you mentioned that you were in your dorm in Palo Alto and you decided to do an installation halfway around the world. I think if you had tried a house in Palo Alto, you would have never started the company because you'd still be trying to get the permit finalized. The complete aside.
Yes, that is. I've heard that, and you know what, Barry, we're working on that too. But you're right. We would have probably gotten bogged down in the red tape, and I must admit the fact that it was easier to do that. At least from a legislative standpoint, was part of the appeal of focusing on emerging markets.
Well, I'm glad you did that. I mean, we're 2 years into a project we're trying to get done in Palo Alto, and I swore I would never do another one, but we did for a friend, and they're the toughest jurisdiction. But putting that aside, your software could definitely help them. So what are some of the biggest problems you solve for these installers? Because you can do a spreadsheet. How are you saving them money? What are you helping them avoid or streamline?
That is a great question, Barry. I would say that it's broken down into 3 categories, right? And I will talk about what we've done sequentially from the origin of the company. So the first category is the actual process of designing a solar installation, namely figuring out how many solar panels will fit, how much energy they'll produce, how much money will save you, and doing that accurately and efficiently. I'll get into those details in just a second. The second category has to do with actually selling the solar installation. You could come up with the most amazing design to a solar professional or an engineer, but if you can't communicate that value to the customer effectively, you're not going to go anywhere. And then the third way in which we're helping really has to do with creating the awareness or marketing the solar installation. So in some ways, I'm actually starting backwards. I'm starting from, hey, listen, we've got the customer interested, and this is how we design for them. And the reason I'm doing that is it follows the evolution of Aurora. Aurora started off as a very powerful design and engineering solution predominantly for residential solar. And the way we saved people money when that was our focus was essentially you no longer had to travel to the site to take measurements, to take shade readings. You could do all of that remotely. So we became a powerhouse really focusing on the CAD engine, creating a 3D model, using things like LiDAR data, creating all sorts of objects within the site so we can get a very accurate reading of the geometry of the roof, how many solar panels will fit, how much energy they'll produce, et cetera, et cetera. So we built our own proprietary performance simulation engine. We did our own proprietary shading analysis engine, our own proprietary and patented 3D CAD engine. All of these are things that we built from scratch. And what that did is it saved solar professionals a ton of money because they no longer had to travel to the site to do what they could now do remotely. According to the Department of Energy, they did a study and it came out to roughly $800+ that was saved on site assessments by avoiding the truck rolls. And that was the initial value proposition. But of course, what we know is that it also enabled new business models. You could now sit in one location and sell solar across the country as opposed to having someone locally who would run around and take all these measurements for you. So that was what I would say was the first 6 or 7 years of Aurora's life as a company, really crafting and refining that process. From there, the next thing that we did was focus on sales, because as I mentioned, you can have the perfect design, but if you haven't been able to educate the customer, if you haven't been able to really get them on board with solar, it counts for naught. So what we did just recently was release a product called Sales Mode AI. And I'll talk a little bit later about what the AI piece is there, because I think it's one of the most exciting innovations in solar across the board. But what we're doing with Sales Mode AI is basically giving every solar salesperson compelling and easy to use tools to create an accurate proposal for the customer. And in many cases, it takes less than 30 seconds to do that with the AI package. And so just to describe how it works, it is a tablet-based product where as you're sitting at the kitchen table with the customer, you can walk them very easily through what their utility bill will look like in the future before they get solar. You can show them almost instantly what solar would look like on their house. If they have any questions about why you chose to put solar panels in this location or that location, you can do that very easily. And you even now have financing integrations, which allow you to run credit through partnerships we have with financiers to run credit and integrate financing all into one compelling platform. So basically, it's a closing machine. And the key there is that we haven't lost our emphasis on accuracy. So when we talk to customers that are using it, they're saying that they found that their cancellation rates have dropped as much as 30% because they can actually hold on to the promises they've made in the sales process because the salesperson was able to put forward a very accurate, in an easy-to-use fashion proposal. And then the third category has to do with awareness. Of all the costs that you mentioned earlier that constitute soft costs, the customer acquisition cost, the marketing, getting the customer interested and ready to buy is probably one of the greatest ones in the industry. And what we've been doing is, this is where the AI piece comes in. We've been working over the last 5 years on building these machine learning algorithms that allow you to put in an address and the system will completely autonomously and automatically come up with a 3D model of the site. It will calculate the shading and it will figure out the best places to put solar panels based on that homeowner's energy consumption bill. So what that means is, since it's done all automatically, you can plop that on your website and a homeowner can self-educate. They could come to your website and 30 seconds later have a estimate of how much money this will save them, and they will be able to have a quick visual of what the house looks like with solar. And Barry, I'm not sure if you've seen it yet. If not, I got to show it to you because you would love it. It looks really good. So it's a conversation starter. It's not the final solution, but it's a conversation starter. And the hope is that by the time that homeowner has gone through that process, they, one, know that they qualify and are a good fit for solar, and two, are excited to have that conversation with the homeowner. With the solar sales rep. So again, it's supposed to be a fully integrated process, because if you can make each one of these pieces or these segments efficient, you can really, really put a dent in soft costs. The first is getting the customer interested and engaged. The second is closing them. And then the third is making sure that the design that you do for them is done efficiently and accurately without you having to travel to the site. And if you're able to do all three of those, you can shave thousands of dollars off of the cost of a solar installation. And that's what we need to make solar ubiquitous.
Yeah, we're gonna have to keep doing that. So how it would be great. Does your tool kind of allow you to zoom in on a neighborhood and say, okay, these houses don't have solar panels on the roof, and then kind of pro forma create a system for each of those naked roofs, and then somehow contact that customer?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have the technology to do that, but we don't have the product yet. What we focused on is empowering every solar installer, such as yourself, to turn their website into a digital lead generator and lead qualifier. So you just embed it on your website, and homeowners come to your website and they can self-qualify, and you get their contact information. We could take the same technology and run an entire zip code through it and say, hey, here are the best sites. But we don't have that product yet. We have the technology, but not the product.
Yeah, it's kind of substituting for door knockers, and we've done a little bit of that, but it just takes a lot of shoe leather, and people don't want to answer the door anymore. How do you integrate with the customer's electric bill? How do you get that utility information? Because I know it's simple in some places and really clunky in others.
Yeah, that's a great question. So in the case of the lead engagement product, it's called Lead Capture AI. There, all we're asking the customers to give a rough estimate of how much they spend on electricity. Is it $100? Is it $300? Is it $500? It's just a slider. And the reason there is that it's just a conversation starter. Once you get into the sales process, there you'd have to get the utility bill information directly from the customer. We have various options. You can put in as much information, and the system will estimate and interpolate what the rest of the year would look like based on the geography or the location of the house. And we're also working on integrations where you should be able to pull in the customer's exact usage. We don't have all of them available yet, but that's soon going to be available as well, where we can work with some of these third-party providers that aggregate this data and make easy ways to get that data. And you'll be able to ingest that in your software and use that as part of your proposal. You have an inbuilt utility rate database, though.
Right. That utility database for installers that are operating more than one utility district is just so incredibly important. And even if you're just in one utility location, understanding the nightmare of rates and keeping up with all the changes is great. So that was a challenge that I was never really able to overcome, but it sounds like you guys have done it, which is great.
Yeah, and it's not a particularly fun thing to sit there, in the midst of everything else that you're doing to figure out, what day is the utility going to publish a new tariff? So it's great that all of that is automated.
Yeah, and it's changing faster and faster. Now, solar installers use a lot of different software tools like Salesforce, like QuickBooks, like Excel maybe. How does Aurora integrate with those with those other IT tools?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for things such as Salesforce and Zoho, and we have out-of-the-box integrations that anybody can. You don't even need to be able to code. It allows you to input or ingest information into Aurora. So that's typically going to be your lead information, like customer first name, last name, phone number, email address, et cetera, et cetera. And we have those out of the box. For those who get an enterprise account with Aurora, we offer a really extensive API. I think it's by far the most extensive API in the industry, where you can do all sorts of things. You can not only ingest information into the platform, you can export information from the platform, everything ranging from the number of panels, the type of panels, the energy production, the shading, the performance over time, which financier you're using. All of that information can be exported images of the site. But you can also do more than that. You can actually run commands via API. So, for example, one of the tools we have is Auto Designer, which allows you to automatically come up with the best design, depending on how you want to define best. And all of that can be done via API. So all of the software that you just mentioned, depending on what your use case is, there are ways to integrate with that using our APIs. We have two versions. We have something that's out of the box, which isn't quite an API, that's simple integration that you can configure and establish. And then we have a more extensive one if you want to build complex workflows.
Yeah,
I would also mention that you mentioned software integrations. We also have other integrations. We have integrations with financiers. We announced that we have an integration with Mosaic. So if you use Mosaic for your solar financing, now you don't have to go log in and out of two different systems. You can just go through a smooth quoting process and ingest their financing information and export to them the information they need to run credit. And we also have an integration with Nearmap so that you can get access to high quality imagery directly in your Aurora account. So that's a great relationship we have and makes things a lot easier for solar installers. They don't have to have several accounts. They can just integrate.
I mean, the reason why I tried to automate this, 20 plus years ago is I sat down to try and count how many times I have to type the customer's name, address, email, and phone number into Excel, into the utility information, into QuickBooks, into Salesforce, into the incentive application, into the design tool from SolarEdge, et cetera. And boy, just doing that once, not only does it reduce time, but the accuracy is 100% if you do it right the first time. So it's a huge benefit there. Yeah. That's great. All right. So what's in the future for Aurora? You guys closed a big financing, and how are you going to be using that to really increase the revenues and the profits at your company?
At a high level, we're going to increase our revenues and profits by creating a lot of value for solar professionals such as yourself and all of our other customers. So there's still a lot of wood to chop in making remote site assessment easier, more accurate. There's still a lot of wood to chop in terms of making sales processes more efficient and boosting closing rates. And there's a huge amount of wood to chop in terms of getting customers interested and excited about solar. I'm really excited about the AI work that we did. It's an example of why you need to raise money, because it was literally 5 years of R&D from some of the smartest product and engineering team members that you've seen in any industry. And of course, that means that you're investing for 5 years without gaining any revenue from it. And now we're bringing that to market. So seeing the kind of effect that it's having on people's workflows and seeing the kind of effect it's having on easing people's closing rates, and I believe it will have in attracting more homeowners to being interested in solar, is a big part of what we want to double down on. We also, a year ago, acquired Helioscope, which was a powerhouse in the CNI space. So we're excited to integrate that into the Aurora fold of companies. And part of what we'll be doing is Helioscope had a fantastic product. They have fantastic people and a very loyal customer following. But there are some specific things that people have really come to see as unique and love about Aurora. So being able to combine the best of both worlds there and enhance the product even further is something I'm quite excited about, and people will be seeing coming forward in the next quarter or two. And then we joked about this. We joked about the permitting process in Palo Alto. That is a unique beast, but more generally speaking, we are developing products and tools to help with the operational side of things, so that ordering something, it shouldn't be this long, convoluted process. And the yardstick we measure ourselves with is really, what is the success of our customers? Are they able to reach more homeowners or more property owners more quickly and at lower cost and more profitably? So if we can do that, as we hope we will, then I think that we would have made good use of the money that we raised.
And tell us a little bit about the financing process that you went through, as far as your venture round. I mean, how did you get started, seed money, bootstrap it, and then get through a couple of rounds of financing to the point at which you're at now?
Yeah, Barry, Aurora is a scrappy startup, but in Silicon Valley and startup land, that's relatively mature. And part of the reason is the first 5 years of our life, we had basically bootstrapped the company. We had raised less than $1 million, and 10 years ago, I'd have thought $1 million is a huge amount, but it really is get started, get people, get really great engineers who could go anywhere, Google, Apple, all of these different organizations, and to just focus folks on building something for an industry that's important for society and the environment, but maybe wasn't attracting a lot of attention back then. So that was the first 5 years of the company's life, and we got to a point where we grew the company to about 50 people on that shoestring budget and based on the revenues we're bringing in. And when we got to 5 years, we got to the point where we realized that, look, the problems that we see in society and the amount of solar that would need to be installed far outweighs what is being done currently. And the only way to support that growth is to raise a lot of money that would allow us to build and invest before we could see an immediate return. So we could have continued on the same pace we were going, but some of the innovations that we've been able to bring to the market in the last 2 or 3 years would have taken us 15 years. And so what we did was made a very deliberate attempt to go out there and target people who would understand it because there wasn't as much interest in the solar industry as a whole. And fortunately, the software, as you said, Barry, is incredibly compelling. The product is great. We had great testimonials from customers, and the metrics reflected that. So since then, we're fortunate that we've managed to find both. We found people who are both interested in the sector and believe in the sector and are seeing all of the macro wins that just seem to indicate that solar is going to grow faster and faster. And at the same time, people who are very, very focused on the importance of technology, of having comprehensive engineering. We've been able to get both.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. I know how hard it is to raise venture money, and I tell you, it's easier to raise venture money, especially where we are on the West Coast for software, a high gross margin kind of a product instead of hardware. So you're really on the right track. So tell us, where's Aurora headquartered? How many people do you have working for you, and what's the mix of software, marketing, sales, and back office?
Yeah, Aurora is headquartered in San Francisco, in California. We currently have about 300 people, and if you looked at the split, it's roughly 50-50 between product and engineering, and anything that supports customers, as well as internal operations. So that would be customer support, marketing, sales, et cetera, et cetera. So that is the current split of the company. We are hiring aggressively. We're growing. We need a lot more engineers to build all of the cool things that the industry needs. We need a lot of customer success people to make sure customers are successful, marketers to get the word out there so that people can actually use these great tools, designers, you name it, across the board. So we are hiring, and I'd encourage anyone who's interested, please go to our website and check out our careers page because we'd love to hear from you.
Oh, well, while we're on the topic, what is your website?
Oh, our website is www.aurorasolar.com. So www.aurorasolar.com.
All right, good. And so for you, do you live in a house or a building that's got solar and storage powering it?
Barry, I am happy to say that for the first time ever, I finally own a place. And that is definitely going to be one of the first things that I will get on board. Talk about permitting issues taking a while, but I will certainly, I don't have it now, but I will certainly have it very soon.
Yeah. It's I was just kind of reflecting on that we've got a house that's electrified with solar and powers the car, but boy, with the rate at which electricity rates are increasing and our society's uncertainty for energy costs with what's going on in Ukraine, boy, it's a nightmare. So having your own source of generation on top of your house, not only does it help you sleep at night, but it really removes a lot of the uncertainty about what's going to happen in 5 years. Where's your electric bill going to be? And it just keeps going up faster and faster. All right.
Yeah.
So
Barry, what I would say is that it's obviously a tragedy and nobody wants to profit from a tragedy. But I think that if someone's fortunate enough to have an electric vehicle, they're feeling much better about what they're doing versus people who are dealing with gas prices. I think that same thing will happen with electricity as well, even though there isn't a strong correlation between oil prices and electricity generation. Just overall, the inflation and costs going up. The good news is that the cost of converting electrons, converting sunlight into electricity is staying pretty constant over the life of a solar installation. So I do agree with you that there will be a boom of interest into what we're doing for that, and also just the security issue or independence issue.
And the demand is going to keep going up because, as you pointed out, we're electrifying our transportation with EVs, and now we're starting to electrifying our heating. And you'll find out in Seattle, it's not as tempered as California, and the natural gas prices are going up really fast. And wait till we start shipping a high percentage of the U.S. natural gas production in LNG ships to Europe, because they're going to need it. It's just huge changes. Yep. All right. Well, any other comments you have, Sam? Because it's just fascinating to talk to you about what Aurora's doing to reduce costs and really make solar, at the end of the day, you're making solar more affordable, solar and storage more affordable for everybody. And
Barry, I think the final thing that I would say is as the company grows and changes, you start tracking different metrics. But the thing that has remained constant for Aurora over the course of its life, from the day when we got our first customer and our first project designed in our software till today, is the number of solar projects that are designed in our software. And that is one of the biggest joys, to see that constantly growing, because we believe that everyone is better off by having gone through Aurora. It's cheaper, it's more accurate, lower carbon emissions than not. But also, to see that organizations such as yourself that have been around for a long time, have been doing excellent work, and still find value in what we're doing is really meaningful. So thank you for having me on this session. Thank you for being a customer. And I hope you have an excellent experience. And I do hope that you'll continue to send us the list of things that you'd like us to build, because we thrive on that.
Yeah, Sam, the pleasure was all mine, and the pleasure of our listeners. So thank you very much for joining us. And thanks to all of our listeners for tuning into the Energy Show. If you missed any of today's show, you can always go to our website at cinnamon.energy and listen to the podcasts.
So, you want to save the world with clean energy? Make money doing it? Confused about the economic and technical realities of residential and commercial solar, batteries, heat pumps, EVs? Want the real-world scoop on new energy technologies, not manufacturer hype? Then tune in to the weekly Energy Show, hosted by Barry Cinnamon. Insights from Barry's 40-plus years in the solar and energy industry will help you understand the future ways we'll generate and consume energy. And now, here's Barry.